The Buffalo Bills season ended with a disappointing loss in the playoffs, but there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic about the team's future. Broadcasting Buffalo starts right now. Welcome to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm your host, Paul Peck. After a heartbreaking loss in the division round of the NFL playoffs, the Bills' season ended in disappointment. Free agency has also brought some major changes to the team. Justin Cejak has more about some of the players who may soon be wearing the blue and red in this month's NFL Draft.
After a disappointing end to the season, Bills fans are eager to see what the team does next. As free agency slowly winds down, the team now shifts their focus to the NFL Draft.
The Bills are still currently in place to contend at a serious level. However, several positions will need to be addressed in this year's draft. Many mock experts have the team targeting an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, or a linebacker with their first pick. The team has done research on several players that will fit their needs at pick number 27. Here are some players to keep an eye on with their first pick. Iowa linebacker Jack Campbell is a popular name being mocked to the Bills at number 27. He enjoyed a highly successful college career, winning multiple awards such as the William V. Campbell Award and the Dick Butkus Award. With similar measurables to former Bills linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, Campbell could be a smart pick to fill the void at middle linebacker. TCU wide receiver Quentin Johnston is also a possible target for the Bills with their first pick. Johnston was a crucial part of TCU's passing offense this past season, helping his team make it all the way to the national championship game. His 6'3" frame and ability after the catch could make him an attractive candidate for the Bills. Darnell Wright is widely considered one of the few premier offensive tackles in this year's draft. His play at Tennessee against top-notch competition earned him a selection on the first-team All-SEC team. Wright can come in and likely be a day-one starter at right tackle for the Bills. Iowa State edge rusher Will McDonald is a refined and accomplished player. He specializes in getting after the quarterback, and that's exactly what the Bills may need with Von Miller's return date up in the air. We spoke to a few Bills fans to learn what Bills Mafia wants with the Bills' first pick. Andrew Forsythe wants the team to beef up their offensive line to protect quarterback Josh Allen.
I mean, just look at the Bengals game. They were rushing 3 or 4 all game, and they were getting pressure the entire time. You can't win a Super Bowl with a below-average O-line. It has to be at least decent.
Tommy Zolnowski believes the team should add a receiver in the first round to alleviate some of the pressure off of Stephon Diggs.
Diggs is an elite wide receiver, so we need another one to completely spread out the field and make teams not be able to double one. I say that because if you look at the layout of the AFC, every team seems to be building around 2-star wide receivers. You have the Dolphins with Waddle and Hill. You have the Bengals with Chase and Higgins.
Jack Cruiser wants the team to find the Tremaine Edmonds replacement with a linebacker in the first round.
Well, the Bills got to replace Tremaine Edmonds. That's the biggest hole on their roster right now. Who's going to play next to Matt Milano? Who's going to fit well with Matt Milano? If they go first round with middle linebacker, I think that's the position that's most at need to fill that hole, at least right now.
For more information on some of the top prospects from the 2023 NFL Draft, you can check out our website at broadcastingbuffalo.com. For Broadcasting Buffalo, I'm Justin Cejak.
When we come back, I'll be joined by an amazing panel of Bills experts led by Bills Wall of Fame legend Steve Tasker and 2 broadcasters who know the team inside and out, Howard Simon and Chris Brown. Stay with us.
Experience Buffalo and Erie County's unique stories with the new Buffalo History Museum podcast. Connect with Western New York's history as you listen to detailed narratives about heritage, architecture, business, innovation, and significant events and people throughout time. The podcast takes inspiration from the museum's collection and beyond, from experts on staff and featured guests. From the 1918 influenza to F. Scott Fitzgerald, experience the stories that make up our region. The Buffalo History Museum podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcast.
This is a college that inspires. Here you'll be engaged, strive for excellence, and prepare for a career. Visit our amazing Elmwood Village campus and apply today. You'll achieve your edge here. This place is Buffalo State College.
Your life has taught you a lot. Now your experience can help change a child's life. Read to Succeed and AARP Experience Corps are looking for local volunteers, 50 and older, to help children in Buffalo City schools learn to read. You'll receive training to help you be a great tutor. You have what it takes to change a young person's life. The experience may even change your own. Volunteer by going to readtosucceedbuffalo.org.
Welcome back to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm Paul Peck, and I am joined by an outstanding panel of Bills experts for our show here tonight. Of course, Steve Tasker, the Bills Wall of Famer, Hall of Fame legend, co-host of One Bills Live with Chris Brown. Of course, Brownie's been associated with the Bills for many, many years. And on the end, the recently retired but still among the best experts in town, he's Howard Simon of WGR 550. And Steve, I'll start with you. We're in that fun NFL offseason month of the draft coming up. Free agency has just wrapped up. How are the Bills different, better, worse, and what more do they need to do to take that final step?
You could make an argument they're better than they were at this point last year. No question about it. They're going to be right there at the end of it. They're going to be in the playoffs. Their expectations would be to win the division. They're still the best team in the division. I've talked to Brownie about this a ton. I don't think there's this hump that they have to get over. They've been good enough to go to and win the Super Bowl for 3 years. But you got to play well on that day when it's an elimination game in the playoffs, with the AFC Championship game, the 13-second game. And this last year against the Cincinnati Bengals, there were a lot of circumstances that led to them not putting out their best performance at that day. But on those days, when the season is on the line, you have to play well against a really good team usually. So that's where they're at right now. And you can call it what you want, some missing ingredient, some guy, some play that will get them over the hump. I think that's just a way of saying you got to play well on that day, and that's where they're at right now. They're going to be there again this year. They'll be good enough to beat any team in the National Football League again this year, but you got to play well on the game where your season may end.
Chris, in the NFL, it starts at quarterback, and obviously when you have a great one like Josh Allen, you're already ahead of most of the crowd. What more do the Bills need to do? What can they do to continue to build around Josh and make him even better?
Yeah, I think they're in an arms race here in the AFC, and we've seen what the Chiefs have done in recent years, whether it's rebuilding their offensive line and investing heavily there, or adding weapons in the receiving core. And the Bills, in their build of their football team, they're kind of a couple of years behind the Chiefs just because the Chiefs got an earlier start. McDermott gets hired in 2017. Andy Reid had already been in Kansas City a couple of years. I think they're trying to mimic that model to some degree, and they got to add another weapon, I think, in the receiving core. I think that's safe to say, whether it's a receiver or a tight end. And then some depth on the offensive line really couldn't hurt to kind of protect Josh a little bit better as well.
Howard, I know sometimes there's a perception of these windows are brief when you have a great quarterback and you have to capitalize on the prime. Now, I don't think Josh is out of his prime yet, but where is that window, and is there any urgency in your mind that you need to be all in to get this thing done while he's still at the top of his game?
I think you need to be all in because of the arms race that Chris was talking about. Look at the AFC and look at the quarterbacks and even look inside the division. If Tua stays healthy, Miami should be better than they were last season. If Aaron Rodgers ends up with the Jets with their defense, they should be tough. So it's not about the Super Bowl window because of Josh's age. If it's anything about the window, Paul, I think it's more about the cap. You're going to probably keep losing guys because the Bills are tight to the cap. Like Tremaine Edmonds walks. What are you going to do about it? So to me, that's the Super Bowl window discussion, not Josh, the age of players, or any of that stuff. It's making sure you can keep the core together and be that contender for an extended amount of time.
Chris, Howard brings up an interesting question. Is it harder to build a team to greatness or keep it great when the salary cap and all these other things, losing players you don't want to lose, starts to become a bigger job for general manager Brandon Beane maybe than it was when he was trying to get the Bills here 5 years ago?
Yeah, it's harder to keep it there, definitely, because if you draft well in the early going, and for the most part they did, they suddenly had a team that was playoff caliber. But now those players are aging out of their rookie contracts, and they want big second contracts. That's when players expect to hit home runs in the NFL in terms of financial well-being, and you can't pay everybody. And when you're paying a quarterback giant money and he's gobbling up a large portion of your salary cap, you got to be more creative. Brandon Beane even said it, like after this season, I'm going to have to be creative this year. And I'm not going to be able to keep everybody, but we're going to see what we can do to kind of keep this team year over year competitive in that upper echelon of the AFC.
Steve, take us inside the locker room. You were a part of teams that had sustained greatness. Now, I know the game is different, free agency and all those other things are much different than they were back then, but from a team perspective, how hard is it? What's the dynamic that has to go into, hey, you were great last year, you need to be even better?
Yeah, and you're right. It's both of them are hard jobs. Either building the team and sustaining it, or they're both really difficult jobs. I think, you're talking to a guy. I played with a bunch of Hall of Fame caliber players, so those guys are rare. Even though we had more than a handful in our organization, they're rare. If you find those guys, it's a little easier to sustain it because those are the guys you pick to keep your team going. You're right. The cap is real in the NFL, so it is going to be more and more difficult to keep these guys. But once you got that guy at quarterback, Brandon Beane and this staff and the scouting staff, the drafting room have made it evident that you can find guys around the league. Other teams lose a lot of great players too, and you'll find guys. Now, the trend has been, and I think this is one of the things that we've seen, they keep their eye on the trends. One is the arms race. You got to keep up with the teams that are really good. You got to score with these guys. At least that's the way it is now. Secondly, once you get that quarterback, you build around him and you stay there. You can stay as competitive as you want. You got that guy. Right now, the trend is the quarterback and the arms race, but it's also one-year contracts in free agency. You can build your roster if you get those guys, even if they come in for 1 year. If they make it, great, give them a 2-year extension. But one-year contracts are also a trend we've seen happen where free agency helps you sustain it for the long haul.
Chris, is this old offensive guy saying that defense doesn't really matter very much anymore?
It's not that it doesn't matter, but
you can't play defense.
No, I think you make a very good point. At some point, you go, we're going to give up 28 a game because we're going to score 35, right? It's the old Peyton Manning Colts sort of. They didn't invest in their defense because they figured just give up, we'll score 7 points more than whatever we give up.
And the rules are slanted in favor of the offense more than ever now. So it just precludes you, and now with the dawn of analytics, and that's a whole part of the equation as well. And it's been proven time and again through analytics that throwing the ball is the more effective way to score. So receiver importance in terms of your roster moves up the priority list, and that's why it's now one of the premium positions. It's left tackle, quarterback, wide receiver, and then on defense it's edge rusher and cornerback. So those are the positions that people are paying for. Those are the positions that people are drafting earlier in the draft because you need them to be successful in this day and age on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, you hear these old guys like me, complain about they don't know how to tackle anymore. The game's kind of soft. The game, the difference is this, that they're still playing at a really high level, but they're doing so within the parameters of how the game is now officiated and administrated. You can't hit guys in the head to knock them off balance, and it's simple physics. You got to hit them at one end or the other to get them off balance, to tackle them. So guys don't tackle the same way they did when I played, or even before I played, or since I played. You see now they try and tackle the ball instead of the player. They try and wrench the ball away. So they don't mind giving up another 5 yards as they're wrestling for the ball, the guy keeping his feet, dragging you down the field, if you can get the ball away. They'll give up the 5 yards. They give up yards for birthday presents. But they don't let you score. So the game is completely different defensively, and it looks completely different. It looks like they're not playing defense anymore to old guys. But the simple fact of the matter is that's the way the game has evolved. It becomes more about the ball and turnovers and big plays defensively rather than not letting them run the ball up the middle for a dive play.
All right, when we continue with these guys, we'll talk about where the Bills may be looking towards in the upcoming NFL draft and the fact that some of those new drafted players may be some of the first that will play in a brand new stadium. That's next on Broadcasting Buffalo.
Hello, Buffalo. I'm Ed Asner. You may remember me as television's no-nonsense news director Lou Grant. And if you think about it, journalists provide us with our first draft of history. Right here in Buffalo, more than 50 years of TV news coverage is being brought back to life. Local stations are working with the Buffalo Broadcasters Association to bring back the stories that helped define the Niagara frontier.
The Pheasant Lane neighborhood, where drifts reach to the rooftops.
It's called the Archive Project, and I support it with all my heart. So should you.
Welcome back to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm Paul Peck. Tonight, we are talking about the Buffalo Bills' upcoming season, but plans for a new Bills stadium are moving forward. Reporter Sam Stuber has more.
I am at the 50-yard line of the new Buffalo Bills Stadium, right across the street from Highmark.
Gilbane Turner Building and Constructing Companies plan to break ground for the new stadium in April of 2023.
We met, Gilbane Turner came in and met with us, the general contractors, and they're wonderful. They're actually moving here for 3 years, so they're going to be part of our community.
The new stadium is projected to open in 2026 with a capacity of 60,000 to 62,000 fans. Compared to the old stadium's 70,000 fan capacity, without the inclusion of suites, it is a much smaller stadium. The reasoning, and I quote, a better in-venue experience for fans.
It's not covered, but it's almost covered, and more of the seats are covered. So I think that's great for the fan base, that they can go and enjoy the game, because lots of times the weather is not, as cooperative as it can be in Orchard Park.
The new stadium will cost $1.4 billion, with $600 million coming from state taxes, with $418 million of those $600 coming from Seneca reservation taxes, $250 million coming from Erie County local taxes, and $550 million coming from both the NFL and the Buffalo Bills.
With Broadcasting Buffalo, I'm Sam Stuber.
Thanks, Sam. I'm here with Steve Tasker, Chris Brown, and Howard Simon. Steve, start with you. The impact of this new stadium, what it means to this franchise, to this community, how much there's a little bit of a sigh of relief that this thing is finally going to start to be built.
Yeah, it'll be great. I mean, when you get into it, the people are going to love it. It's going to be a great venue. It will look great. It'll be different than the old stadium, Rich Stadium, Highmark, New Era, whatever you want to call the old stadium. And its reiterations, this stadium will be different. You'll have better seats. I think there'll be, from what I've seen, there's going to be the same kind of atmosphere. They're going to make sure that it feels like a Bills game. I don't think there's much of a downside to it. The traffic patterns, the structure, everything's going to be right there like it always has been. So the change will be minimal, but once you get inside, it's going to be much, much upgraded. It's going to be, people will love it.
Chris, have you seen something or heard about something that going to be really cool in this stadium that maybe people haven't seen before here or are really going to love once it happens?
I mean, our Executive Vice President, Ron Ricciuti, has talked about this a lot already, but there won't be a place when you're up from your seat where you cannot still have full view of the field. So if you're at the concession stand, there will still be a means by which you can still kind of overlook the field when you're not in your seat all the way around. So that's one thing. The other cool thing is you can access every point in the stadium no matter where you are. So if you have buddies that have season tickets on the other side of the stadium and you want to catch up with them after a quarter or at halftime, you can do that because you can get to the other side. That's not as easily done in the existing stadium. You got to go outside and all the way around and then that kind of thing. So there are a lot more amenities as you would anticipate in a stadium.
Right. Howard, I know there was some segment of people that wanted to see this thing be a dome. I don't know that it ever made sense here monetarily. It didn't make sense. Are you okay with the elements being a part of the future of Bills football?
Depends. Am I sitting outside in the new stadium or in the press box?
Or under the cover, right? There's a lot more. That's a lot broader question than it used to be.
Yeah, I honestly, for me, it came down to budget. Sure, it'd be nice to have climate controlled. Having covered some games in domes over the years, it's great. You don't have to worry about being bundled up inside for the game. But honestly, it was budgetary, and we know people are going to pay more for the tickets, right? For the seats, the PSLs, all that stuff's going up. There was, for me, no reason to add however many hundreds of millions of dollars to put a dome on the stadium.
Right. All right, Howard, I'll roll back into you here. The draft coming up at the end of the month. Bills are going to pick 27th in the first round. Give me a sense of what you think the priorities and the focus are going to be, not just for that first round pick, but, where do you think the Bills need to be looking to make themselves better in this draft?
For sure, wide receiver. But I think things have changed a little bit. I was trying to pick Chris's brains to help me out here because, once the season ended, I think I was with a lot of people. You got to get more help for Stefon Diggs. You've got to get either Gabe Davis has to step up and be more consistent, but even still, he's got 1 year left, Paul. He's an unrestricted free agent. Remember that cap stuff we talked about. So you have to get another wide receiver in here, potentially a guy who could be number 2 next to Stefon Diggs. I think that is an absolute must-have. Other positions, well, now linebacker. There's a huge hole that opened up on the roster when Tremaine Edmonds left in free agency. I don't think there's a guy on the roster right now that steps into that spot, an every down linebacker. So that's a big position. Let's not forget about safety. I know Poyer re-signed, but Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer could be gone within the next year or two. So I think you have to add at safety. And honestly, after that, you could probably look at, Chris mentioned O-line depth. I would like to add there as well. Maybe even bring in someone who could provide some competition for Spencer Brown at tackle.
Yeah, I Steve referenced this a little bit with us before, Chris. Maybe just by nature of the position, we don't talk as much about offensive line, defensive line. Do I get the sense that you think that might be an area where we might see more new reinforcements than maybe people expect?
I think so, because people see bodies on the roster, but GMs always have to think a year in advance, a year ahead. And all 4 defensive tackles on this roster are on their last year of their contracts. They will all be free agents next year at this time. So you have to plan ahead there. Otherwise, the cupboard's bare, because there's no guarantee you're getting all 4 of those guys back. I mean, maybe you will, maybe you get 1 or 2, but what are you doing after that? So I think they'd like to have some young players in the pipeline there. It's not a great defensive tackle class, so they'll have to pick and choose and find some value somewhere, even if it's not deemed a major priority right now at this moment for this coming season. But for the future, it definitely is. And yeah, I think Howard's right. You got to get some competition for Spencer Brown. He's entering a very important 3rd season, and we've seen some players in the pipeline for the Bills take off in their 3rd season. Dawson Knox, Taron Johnson, those are players that have done that. I think they're hoping for that for Spencer Brown, but it'd be nice to get a little insurance in case that doesn't happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, Steve, what are your thoughts about where the focus needs to be?
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna try and get to a place where they don't have to focus on any position or position group. What they'll do is, what you really want to help for in a first round pick is just get a guy who's going to be on your team for a decade, a guy who is the best chance for you to have a player who's productive for a long time. It's too valuable an asset to get somebody who's going to be in and out of the league. You gotta, if you're gonna get a guy with the highest floor and the highest ceiling. Get the best player possible, whether it's at a money position or not. Now, hopefully, they're at 20, even at 27, there'll be a handful of guys at different positions, or 5 guys or so all at different positions where you could pick from. So you could pick a little bit to the need of your roster. But like I said earlier, it's always appropriate to take a big guy because they're rare. Great ones are really rare. Those guys, I think, are higher in value. But then you go towards money positions like corner and wide receiver, and kind of hang in there with those guys. And that's always appropriate to take one of those guys as well.
Does picking 27th, Chris, lead a team more in the direction that Steve is talking about, where it's less about position because you're more dictated by who's there and who's not, and more about quality players at important positions?
Yeah, I think it's both of those things. So yes, you're at the mercy of what falls to you, and does what's left value-wise match up to your board? Because if it doesn't, you better get the heck out of there, because now you're quote-unquote reaching, and Brandon Beane doesn't like to do that. And then secondarily, yes, is the value there? And then B, is there value at the positions that you would like to address sooner rather than later? So with that in mind, you have to look at that and say, okay, this is what we have to work with. Are we good to stay here, or do we have to get the heck out of here and go back to round 2, pick up some draft capital, and hope we get better value later? That's the challenge. Can they do that at the need positions like linebacker? They probably can, because most of those linebackers are not seen necessarily as high-end first-round draft choices. So people like Drew Sanders from Arkansas, Jack Campbell from Iowa, you might be able to wait till round 2 for players like that. But again, there's a risk because it only takes one team that falls in love with that guy and says, oh, he's a first-round pick. We're taking him anyway.
Right. All right. Well, you guys have been amazing. You've given us incredible insight into this offseason, into the future, and I know everybody around here is looking forward to what this season could be. Thanks for your time, as always. Keep up the good work. We'll have some closing thoughts on our show when we return on Broadcasting Buffalo.
No matter the occasion, Premier Gourmet is here for you. Featuring Buffalo's best craft beer selection, grocery store items, coffee, and gifts. Find locally made Buffalo products and everything you need for your home bar. Visit premiergourmet.com.
This is a college that inspires. Here you'll be engaged, strive for excellence, and prepare for a career. Visit our amazing Elmwood Village campus and apply today. You'll achieve your edge here. This place is Buffalo State College.
No matter the occasion, the Premier Group is here for you. Take advantage of our easy online ordering and curbside pickup. Or shop the finest selection of unique wines, spirits, and gifts at any of our 3 independently owned Western New York locations.
Experience Buffalo and Erie County's unique stories with the new Buffalo History Museum podcast. Connect with Western New York's history as you listen to detailed narratives about heritage, architecture, business, innovation, and significant events and people throughout time. The podcast takes inspiration from the museum's collection and beyond, from experts on staff and featured guests. From the 1918 influenza to F. Scott Fitzgerald, experience the stories that make up our region. The Buffalo History Museum podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcast.
Final segment here on Broadcasting Buffalo. Just enough time for some quick closing comments from Howard, Chris, and Steve. Howard?
Offense, offense, offense. I'm with Chris. Remember the Kansas City motto, you got to score in this league, add weapons to help Josh.
And while that is correct, there is a gaping hole at linebacker, as Howard said earlier, and they haven't addressed it in free agency. You got to get somebody who can at least compete for the starting job at middle linebacker.
Yeah, there's still some time left, so things could change a little bit, but I think what they're going to try and do is be able to take the best player on the board. I'm with Howard. I think it's going to be an offensive draft. I'm not afraid to go into the draft and even trade out of that spot like he referred to. I mean, you got to stay fluid. Don't go in with a plan because it's going to blow up in your face. Just go in there getting ready to maneuver or take the guy you want. There should be a handful of them. And hopefully the Bills are going to get somebody who becomes part of the family for the next decade.
Are we good with these guys wanting a lot of 45, 35 games this year?
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. We got some horses, man. Hit them with the whip and let's go. You know?
All right. Hey, guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the draft. Enjoy the offseason. Can't wait till September rolls around. On behalf of the Buffalo Broadcasters Association and everyone at Buffalo State University and Canisius College, we thank you all again for joining us for this episode of Broadcasting Buffalo. If you'd like more information about the upcoming Bills season, visit our website at broadcastingbuffalo.com. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great night.